G'day guys, and today I want to share with you a little spitball theory that I've come up with upon reflecting on a past video of mine. So I made a video about a week ago talking about the nanny state road laws in effect in Australia, and as I made the video and I finished it and uploaded, I started to think about why these laws were in effect. And something that tweaked my interest was the idea of government mandated universal healthcare. And I sort of married the two ideas together and thought that maybe nanny state road laws were introduced in order to keep the cost of universal healthcare down, because if you introduce universal healthcare and anyone can get healthcare for quote free, then anyone who is not very clever, doesn't wear their seatbelt, drives furiously and recklessly, etc., can, get into accidents, cause themselves harm, and then claim healthcare for free, quote free. So I thought that in an effort to keep the cost down and to preserve government control over the economy, the state would introduce laws that would, quote, keep people safe, but really keep the cost of universal healthcare down. Before I get on to my findings, I do want to point out that the free market was accounting for this issue of road accidents and particularly seatbelt wearing. That's what I'm going to be focusing on today. So if we have a few points here, we have in the 1930s, physicians in the US were putting seatbelts, called lap belts at the time, just one strap across your lap, in their cars, and they were advising manufacturers to fit them in their cars. We have the Society of Automotive Engineers in 1955 appointing a motor vehicle seatbelt committee, and in the 50s, car manufacturers were starting to put lap belts and chest belts and things like that in their cars as optional accessories. Now, of course, if you had to look at two cars and you saw that one was, say, $1,000 and one was, say, $1,100, but the car that was more expensive had a seatbelt, I think that anyone who wasn't the stingiest of stingy, or basically not very intelligent, would choose to pay a bit more for personal safety. Especially when some research was funded by the government, showing how people wearing seatbelts suffered less serious injuries and it reduced mortality rate in car accidents. And subsequent recommendations, wear your seatbelts, fit seatbelts, caused a change in the market, and that increased the level of seatbelt fitting and seatbelt wearing. And that was just a response to changes in the marketplace. Car companies such as Volvo were able to capitalize on this and say, hey, look, this will keep you safer. And as a result, we're able to sell more units. So yes, what I really want to highlight is the fact that the free market was taking care of the problem, and the government doesn't have sole responsibility in reducing mortality rates on the road. That aside, let's go look at what I found. So just to recap, I was theorizing that universal healthcare was introduced and then mandatory seatbelt usage was passed as a law. And if we have a look at my research here, we can see on the left hand side universal healthcare, the year it was introduced, and on the right hand side the date of mandatory seatbelt fitting, so the government telling car manufacturers you have to put these seatbelts in. And by this time it was the 3-point system that we're familiar with today, and then the mandatory seatbelt usage. I've chosen primarily to focus on Western industrial countries at this time, as they were the most advanced at the time. Asian countries like Korea and Japan did industrialize after the Second World War, but their welfare states were not to come into effect until much later. This is due to the different cultural and social changes that were happening at the time, feminism and the like, the importation of the Third World and things of that nature. So out of the 13 countries I've assembled here, I have Spain and Netherlands on the page over. We can see that Australia, France and Spain introduced healthcare after the mandatory seatbelt usage laws. A possible explanation for this, especially in the case of France, since it was so close, is that it was a preemptive move. So rather than reacting to the increased cost, potentially increased cost, I don't know that for sure, after the universal healthcare was introduced, they saw down the tunnel of time and saw that it might be an issue. So I'm not claiming anything in concrete here, it's just a theory. Of course, correlation does not equal causation. Just because these 10 of the 13 nations I've assembled here have introduced universal healthcare before mandatory seatbelt usage doesn't prove anything at all. I just thought it was an interesting trend I thought I would share with everyone else. So yeah, I encourage further research into this. Don't just look at seatbelts, look at other nanny state laws. Riding a helmet whilst bicycle riding is one that comes to mind, and things like that. All I'm hoping to do with this video is just to encourage further research, so get out there and have a good one.